What is going on, everybody? Hopefully you can hear me out there and the mic isn't too messed up. As I was going live here, I realized that it was on my backup mic. So hopefully I can get it back to the one that'll sound a little bit sharper. So we'll multitask as we're getting into this introduction here, see what we can do. But welcome on in. Hopefully everyone has had a great start to their week, is enjoying waste management, Super Bowl week as well. What I like to call the Super Bowl of our PGA Tour season here. It's one of the best fields now because we have the elevated status, all that sort of fun stuff. So really, great field, great event, great golf course, really everything coinciding at the same time. So the mic should have just changed over. Hopefully it sounds a little bit clearer now. And welcome on in. We have Darren down there, Jump Boy Bert, what's going on? Alex M, Fantasy Dork, and of course Noah. What is going on, everybody out there? And he's calling me the GOAT out here. I have to say, Noah, that's Tom Kim. Tom Kim's the GOAT. What's going on, Rajesh? What's going on, Carson? And sweet. Good to know that my tech skills over here ended up saving us real quickly. So let's hop right into it, right? We'll get into chat here in a second, but let's go through the golf course to begin. So weather's going to be a little bit of a factor, at least what I'm expecting right now here for Thursday. But TPC Scottsdale, not a birdie fest and not a difficult course. Scoring average right around 0.75 under par. It was 0.71 last year. Fairways that are a little bit tougher to hit. They are relatively thin out there. They aren't very wide, right? They're right around like 30 yards wide. You see plenty of courses where they're like 40, 50 yards wide. But the GIR percentage isn't that much lower than usual. It's in fact about 4% higher than what you see week to week because the rough isn't very penal around a TPC Scottsdale. And you have some relatively large surfaces as well. So you would expect this to be a little bit of a putting contest, I would think, with just those stats alone. But that doesn't nearly tell you the entire story. If you look at the leaderboard from last year, it's all of the best ball strikers in the world. Part of that is due to field strength, and that's only going to be more so the case this year with the top end field. But the greens, though they're large, you have to hit the right tier. Many of them have a lot of undulation in between the tiers. So when you're missing by 30, 40 feet, you have almost a 0% make percentage going up to that next next surface there. It's almost like there's 3 separate greens on some of these 7,000 square foot greens. So what that ends up doing is reasserting the importance of approach play, because if you're not hitting the right tier of the green, sometimes getting down in 2 putts for a par is a little bit harder than most of these players are used to. So you're still looking at some of the best ball strikers on tour. Off the tee is emphasized a lot more here than most courses because the fairways are so hard to hit. And it is a relatively long course too. It's just over 7,400 yards. So with the top end strength of the field, we're already going to see a bunch of the top 10, top 20 in the official World Golf Rankings absolutely smashing this week. But even more so on a course like this. So, when we get to the RBC Heritage later in the season, it's going to be another one of these elevated events. It might not quite be the same kind of effect because over there at Harbor Town, it's a much shorter course. Pretty much any kind of play style can succeed there. And while we're still going to see plenty of the studs towards the top of the board there, it's not going to be nearly as much emphasis as what you're getting at a ball strikers kind of fest. So that's the golf course. If you've seen my course breakdown, of course, I go a lot more in depth on that. But some of the past champions include Scheffler last year. You had Brooks Koepka, Webb Simpson, Ricky Fowler. Webb Simpson and Ricky Fowler are kind of known for having a lot of success on these West Coast desert kind of golf courses. Gary Woodland, you had a Hideki win back-to-back in 2017, 2016. Brooks win again back there in 2015. Just a bunch of guys that excel with the iron play. Let's take a look at the weather, which I promised it's going to be a little bit of a area of contention this week because once again, the meteorologist cannot agree on a thing. Tomorrow, Windfinder has the wind gusts in the morning getting close to 30 miles an hour, which if this is anywhere nearly remotely accurate, is going to cause huge problems for the guys going off early tomorrow morning, which happen to be some of the best players on tour, because just like they did with Pebble Beach, where they put all of the best players playing on Pebble Beach on Saturday, of course, it ended up getting rained out, so we couldn't even watch the best players on Saturday. But ideally, they were hoping for primetime golf to have the best players all together, right? Just, for ease of access. So they're all in the morning wave here. And if this remotely holds up, it's going to be an issue. Like I said, 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts are a big deal. Tomorrow, the PM wave is going to be a lot easier than the morning wave, so it's the same kind of effect. So I'm wondering whether Windfinder has this correct or if they're just full of shit, because you go over here to Willy Weather, and tomorrow morning they're calling for, let's see, 4 miles an hour of sustained winds. Towards midday, it goes up to right around 10 miles an hour, which is, in terms of sustained winds, a little bit lower than what they have over there in Windfinder. And the apex, I should say, I don't even know the word for it. I guess the maximum wind gust that you're going to see, right around like 13 to 14 miles an hour. So Willy Weather not calling for nearly as much action there. You go over to the Windy app, another one of the sites that's doing weather over there in Scottsdale, and you'll see they're kind of with Willy Weather, right? They don't think it's going to be that bad, particularly in the morning. You can see they have it close to like 14 miles an hour of wind gusts. Sustained winds between 5 to 10 miles an hour there during the morning wave. So they're calling for pretty much next to nothing. So do we trust Windfinder? This is also for the Scottsdale airport. So if you're trying to find this wind tower, I'll just show it to you on the map, because I get a lot of questions about like, oh, what wind tower do you use and why, so on and so forth. Well, this is the Scottsdale airport right here, right? This is TPC Scottsdale, the stadium course, right? So it's literally within, earshot distance of the airport there. When we're watching the coverage, you're going to see a lot of people, and you're going to probably hear airplanes during the coverage. That's how close it is. So you're using the wind tower that's right next to it, and they're calling for these wind gusts tomorrow morning. So it's hard to gauge. The wind tower that I'm pulling these from is also, I'll show it to you on the map too, right? It's that same exact airport that's about 0.2 miles away from the golf course. And same thing with this wind tower too. So it's not like it's geographical why we're getting the different forecasts here. It's maybe the models that they're using, maybe the systems that they're using are just a little bit different. And boy, oh boy, is it spitting out a different forecast. So I don't really have an answer for you, to be quite frank. I'm not playing a huge wind edge this sort of tournament, whether it's for DFS, whether it's for props, that sort of thing. I'm playing it relatively flat. This is a course where wind doesn't tend to be a huge factor. The only year it is when Ricky Fowler went out there and won, I believe, like 4 or 5 years ago. And they were like 30, 40 mile an hour wind gusts the entire weekend. So it wasn't like it came through for like an hour or two. It wasn't like it was some spontaneous little wind gust that completely changed the golf tournament that time. And that's kind of what it looks like here, right? There might be like an hour or two where the wind gusts are a little bit higher than, maybe the players are comfortable with, but I'm not sure if it's enough to sustain playing a wind edge. So I'm going to keep an eye on it, especially tomorrow morning, because, I'm on the East Coast. Lock is, I believe, at right around like 10 a.m. Eastern time. So I'll have time to wake up, take a look at the forecast, see if it's matured on any of the sites, see if there's any sort of action or change there. But as is, especially because like the morning on Friday, they're calling for the same kind of effect, right? You can see at 7 a.m. when they're starting, it's going to be like 30 mile an hour wind gusts. I'm going down to closer to like 23 miles an hour from 8 to 9 a.m. I think it's too hard to tell, at least as of right now, if there's going to be that massive edge. And even if there is going to be an edge, I think it's going to be like 0.3, 0.4 shots. It's just not changing the calculus with my player pool all that much. So if you're somebody that likes stacking up the weather, feel free to go out there, play 10% of your lineup, stacking one wave, maybe stacking the PMAM in 5 out of your 6 builds, maybe doing the opposite of that, right? Stacking the PMAM, whatever the case may be. I'm all for that kind of stuff. I'm all for correlation, particularly when you're playing a 150 max and you have the kind of lineups to go out there and put maybe 10, 15% of them to a weather edge. But if you're playing a single entry, if you're playing like 2 to 3 max or even a 20 max kind of contest, I think you're doing a little bit too much if you're looking at the weather this week. So that's my take there. Let's catch back up on chat, see what's going on. Jack Fisher says a lot of folk on Fowler train. Yeah, I unfortunately jumped off the DFS train with Fowler, but I still think they'll have a decent week. It's just the ownership, the price tag, a little bit too hefty for me. So yeah, I agree. A lot of people seem to be on Ricky here. MJ, what's going on? Nick says, woohoo, I can hear you. Sweet. I'm glad that I was able to get the real mic working, because the other one sounds like a piece of human trash. It's through a webcam that I actually have recording me. It has a built-in camera, but it's Walmart quality at best. Who has better flow, Tommy Ladd or Luke? It's got to be Tommy Ladd. He's got those locks going. He's had them for longer than me. So put some respect on Tommy Ladd's name. It's definitely him.
It's only a punting contest if Rahm says so. Yeah, right. Especially if he says so at the Amex and then goes out there and wins the next year, right? That's for sure. Nick says, well, what are these apps run by women trying to agree where to eat? Yeah, you mean the win sites? Yeah, I don't know, man. It's like they don't know what to expect tomorrow. Like, I think there's going to be like little patches where the wind kicks up, kind of like what you saw at Pebble, which that happens because it's on the coastline. But at least based on like the projections I'm seeing, the forecast, it looks like there's just going to be like these little pockets of wind that come through, and they don't know how to project it. So yeah, it seems like they're run by people that can't make up their mind. Of course, if you ask your wife, your girlfriend, significant other, where they want to eat, you're just going to get nothing. You're going to get crickets back. You're usually just best off making a projection and going with it. So I guess I understand it. It's kind of what those weather stations are doing. They're just like, this is what we're expecting to happen tomorrow, right? The next site comes out, this is what we're expecting to happen tomorrow, even if they're all just drastically off. So is what it is. What's going on, Alex? Welcome on into the chat. Dinger Bet's the GOAT down there. GameCube says, we appreciate and love the research you do. Well, I appreciate you stopping by, showing the support, man. Welcome on in. What's going on, Corey? Trey says, do prize picks props. That'll be at the end, man. You're going to have to be patient there. We have a schedule around here, and prize picks is at the end. So jokes aside, stop by in like 30 minutes, 40 minutes, that sort of thing. That's where we'll be touching on prize picks. But we're not changing up the schedule for you, honey bun. Miles says, Max Homa with a free hit this week. A top 7 shoe. And so I'm assuming you got a free bet on Max Homa. It's a pretty decent week to have a free bet on Max Homa, right? Coming in on an absolute heater, pretty decent golf course for him. He's from Scottsdale. That's a pretty sweet little gig you have there. I want to know how you got that free bet. I'm kind of jealous. It's a good course to have him at for one of those free bets. Let's talk through DFS. So towards the top of the board, guys, you cannot go wrong. So I just want to start this with, we're going to talk through a few guys that I like this week. But if you like Rory McIlroy, you like guys that are going to be super chalky this week, then play them. There's no wrong answer up top. These are all world-class players. And I'd say the whole way down to somebody like Hideki Matsuyama, not one player is out of form, right? They're all coming in with some sort of success. Actually, I'd say Justin Thomas, you can kind of lump in there, right? Justin Thomas, Hideki Matsuyama, not really playing their best golf. But outside of those two, multitude, just every reason you could possibly think of, they pretty much play them all. Some of them have elite course history, whether it's a Xander Schauffele, John Rahm has elite course history. I would quantify JT is also in that category. Hideki Matsuyama has the best course history I've ever seen on a player. He has multiple wins. His first 2 starts at the event when he was not even that much of a presence on tour were both top 5 finishes too. So I think he went like 5th, 4th, and then win for his first 4 starts at this event. Like I said, you can't go wrong, right? Like even the guys that are out of form, like a JT too, have some of the best track records you could possibly imagine. So if you have guys up top that you like, when you saw the odds board, you saw the pricing board, you were on them, then you play them this week. It's that simple. But a few things to note, right? Let's make sure that we're executing our lineups the right way. Is depending on how many lineups you're playing, you're going to have to full fade a few people, right? And that's where this gets uncomfortable. So if you're playing at 150 max, I would say from, let's say, Hideki Matsuyama up, you need to at least, and this is an at least right here, roll out 4 players. So of these top 10 guys here, you can play at most 6 of them if you're playing in a 150 max. And you can't make the 6 of them like the chalkiest plays on the slate, right? So your 6 can't be Rahm, McIlroy, Schauffele, Cantlay. Like those can't be 4 of the 6, right? You can't have all the guys that are going to be like 20% owned. You're going to have to take a few pivots. So just for strategy's sake, okay, make sure that you at least get some leverage up top. That's really all I'm trying to say here, right? Is you can't play everybody. I know you're going to want to play everybody up top. You just can't do it. In terms of ownership, there's not really anybody that I would classify as mega chalk or somebody that you just purely have to fade because of ownership. Even guys like a John Rahm are right around like 19%, a little bit higher than that, a little bit closer to 20%. Same thing with Rory McIlroy, right? So if you want to play one of them, just take them in 40% of your lineups. It's doable. It's not like you have to invest half of your lineups into one of them. And like I said, there's every reason in the world to get to all of these guys up top. So play your guys, play them in bunches. The lowest owned player up top, just to give you some an idea, is a Justin Thomas. He's 13.5% owned. Hideki Matsuyama is right around 10% too. So if you're going down to like that mid 9K range, lower end of the 9K range, he's another one of those pivot options you can get to. But if you play like 30, 35% of any of the rest of these guys up top, you're looking at getting some pretty solid leverage. So that would be my spiel there. Now to give you a little bit of what I'm doing, right? To talk through my thought process, because you guys know I don't fade anybody without, some sort of reason to do so. I'm not the type of person. I mean, I'll play somebody that's like 25, 30% owned if there's all the reasons in the world to play them. And I got caught last week, right? I made that same comment last week about Mav McNeely. I challenged the chat. I said, give me one reason to fade Maverick and I'll fade him this week. And nobody helped me out. Nobody bailed me out. Like, what are you doing, chat? Right? You're supposed to save me in those kind of situations, right? I would still play Maverick in that kind of thing. Like, I just literally didn't see a fault into playing him, and he pussied out with his shoulder. So he was going to miss the cut anyways. So I'm not really blaming it on the injury there. But for a few of the guys I'm not playing up top, there's a reason to the madness. Just understand that. So I'm not playing Rory. I'll go out there and just say that right now. And it's due to the left miss. He is a drawer of the golf ball. He starts the ball typically on the right side of fairways and draws it back to the center or to the left center of the fairway. That's a majority of his shot shape. And around a track with tons of trouble on the left side, whether it's natural areas, whether it's water there on the back nine, a lot of the water hazards, caddy corner to the left side, even some of the water on the front nine is also located to the left. That could be an issue for Rory McIlroy. It's probably not going to be an issue, right? It's Rory McIlroy. But if you take a look at his one start ever at the Waste Management Phoenix Open, he finished tied for 13th. So that was in 2021, I believe. Yeah, 2021. He finished T13 right there, which, of course, at his price tag is nowhere near enough. And he lost a bunch of strokes putting that year, which if you take a look at his numbers on Bermuda greens with the overseed that you're seeing this week, he's a career loser on them, which, of course, compared to his lights out baseline, is losing about 0.7 shots per round to that 36-hole baseline. So whether it's the miss to the left, the putting numbers, I found my reason not to play Rory McIlroy this week. But like I said, he could very well win this thing by 5 shots. He's the world number one for a reason. So if you were on Rory McIlroy to begin, you loved him as a play, by no means talk yourself off of him. Somebody else I'm not playing is Xander Schauffele, and this is something that came up, towards the end of my process this week, because early in the week I had him close to like 16.5%. It was reasonable. You could play him in 35% of lineups and get that leverage you needed to, but now he's arguably the highest owned player on the slate. I have him at right around 19%, which is just a hair below guys like a Rahm and a Rory McIlroy up top. So when I'm comparing prices, right, they're like $800 off, they're $1,000 off, and you're getting the same ownership level. That's blasphemous to me. There were a few weeks ago, we were talking about Xander Schauffele being injured, right? And I know he has maybe the best track record around this course, right? 3rd, 2nd, 16th, 10th, 17th. When I have to compare him to these guys up top, like Rory, and a Jon Rahm, he's not even on that same stratosphere to me, right? Like there's a clear talent gap between Rory and Rahm to me, and then guys like a Scotty Scheffler and Tony Finau. And then I think there's another gap between these two and then guys like a Xander, JT, and Homa at this point. There's just levels to this game. And, when there's less than $1,000 separating those two, and I think Xander actually might be higher owned than those two guys up top, it makes him a relatively straightforward fade. So I'm not playing him this week. I get it, though. Like I said, the track record is ridiculous. Another guy I'm not playing, let's see. There's not that much chalk there. Oh, yeah, it's Patrick Cantlay, guys. So this would be like my third quote-unquote fade of the week. Patrick Cantlay, just like Xander Schauffele, he started the week at like 16% ownership, which I was going to play, right? 35%, willing to go to for a lot of these guys. But now he's like 20% owned. He's gone way up in terms of the ownership. He's only played here one time, just like a Rory McIlroy. And last year, ended up finishing runner-up in that playoff finish. So clearly, I shouldn't say clearly, I suppose clearly plays well in his 1 year sample size, but it's exactly that, right? A 1 year sample. I'm not talking about a ton of data that we have on Cantlay. I think a lot of the reason that people want to play him is he's played well at TPC Summerlin, another one of those desert, quote unquote, desert style golf courses. Over there at La Quinta, over there for the Amex, he's had a few solid finishes over the last few years. And they're all those quote unquote desert style courses. So that's the reason for playing Patrick Cantlay. Like I said, if you were on him, you loved him this week, then go out there and play him, right? By all means. But guys like Cantlay, Xander, even somebody like a Rory McIlroy, right? I kind of wanted to play them this week, but they weren't my first clicks. They weren't the guys that I was like, oh, I really hope they're low this week and I can play them. So now that they're getting that steam, they're the 3 highest owned players on the slate. They're going to be people I'm trying to stay away from. And I kind of have a rule with Patrick Cantlay. If he's highly owned, I just don't play him. He burns people so much, and I feel like people just forget about it every single time. They'll get burned. I'll hear for 2-3 days afterwards, I'm never playing Patrick Cantlay again. And then the next tournament we get to, he's like 20% owned. So I've seen it too many times before. I have too much scar tissue to go out there and play him. Those I'd say would be like the chalk report up there in the 8-9K range. So sorry, I'd say 9-10K range. Getting a little ahead of myself. Let's go down to the 8Ks. So like I said, I still like JT, but down here in the 8K, bottom of the 9K range, a lot of pivots you can get to. Like I said, Hideki's like 10% owned. Sungjae Im is getting some ownership, and it's deservingly so. He's been on fire of late, loves these sort of greens as well. But Tom Kim is nearly 17% owned, and then Cam Young, also borderline mega chalk this week. So down here in the 8K range, a lot of the ownership is consolidated. Like I said, a Sungjae, Tom Kim, and Cam Young are getting about half the ownership. That means that players like a Matt Fitzpatrick, you can lump in Hovland to this conversation, Jordan Spieth especially, even Sam Burns, Terrell Hatton, even Thagala to an extent, right? Somebody that finished in the top 3 last year are all getting squeezed out in terms of their ownership because there's that quote-unquote big 3. So just like up top, I told you that you should probably be at least, fading 4 out of those top 10 players. You need to fade at least one of these 3, at least one of them, if not 2 out of the 3. Now, personally, I'm playing 2 out of the 3 of a Tom Kim, Sungjae Im, and Cameron Young, but you can't play all 3. If you do so, well, you can't play anybody else in the 8K range, or I should say that like top end of the 8K, low end of the 9K range. You can't play Hideki. You can't play any Victor Hovland. Can't even think about playing Fitz, any of these other players, because you just can't play everybody, right? I'm playing 115 lineups, and I'm telling you this. So if you're playing 20, you're playing 5, 10 lineups, that sort of thing. It's even more so the case. You probably need to be taking an extra player out there. Let's go ahead, catch up on chat, see what's going on down there. Let's see. Find my spot from before. Side eye on my DP lineups while doing PGA lineups. What a time to be alive. Yeah, what DP World Tour is going on right now. By the way, Nick, the absolute GOAT when it comes to Euro. So love to see it, Nick. Hopefully you end up hitting big this week. I didn't fire in any outrights, but I have a few rogue DFS lineups out there. We played Valimaki this week. I played a few of the guys from your list too, Nick. So let's ride. Robert, laughing at the honey bun bit. Yeah. Prize picks at the end. I love it, Jonathan. Thank you for helping me out there. Travis says, Rory coming in cocky never goes well. Yeah, that quote that he gave today where he was like, yeah, I'm feeling like world number 1. And he gave that little like smirk that he always does during those conferences. I hate it. I can't stand the guy. So obviously, like I said, you can't play everybody up top. That's why I'm not playing Rory. I don't like him. And a couple of those reasons we went over. Jason says, what do you think about Scheffler? I love Scheffler. So I kind of avoided talking about him here because I went over him in my core plays video. But yeah, he's my horse up top this week. He's the guy that I'm putting a lot of my, hard-earned dollars behind there because he won here last year. He seems to love these greens. So he won here. He won at the API. He's showing up at the match play, right? He won that last year too. The same kind of greens. He's showing up at a few other of the West Coast events where you have this hybrid surface. Love him, man. Absolutely love him. What's your hit record on Prize Picks, Brody? Don't know that off the top of my head. There's a couple thousand props or whatnot, but my global hit rate is close to about 65%, at least for golf. That doesn't include other sports. Alex says, before you got head of team weights, you're sneaky. So you're saying, okay, you're getting ahead of yourself here is what you're saying. Gotcha. You're good. A sneaky play is Harman over 13.5 greens. I don't like him over 13.5. I had him under 13 greens. I know he's at 12.5 now. So I'm assuming you mean over 12.5. I'm not a huge fan of that. He's lost strokes on approach over his last 3 events. He's also one of the shorter hitters on tour. So at a longer course, I'm not a huge fan of that. So yeah, I had his under there, Alex, but that was at 13 greens. So obviously now that it's at 12.5, it's a little bit of a different story. But yeah, I guess that would be my pushback would be of late, he just hasn't been the Brian Harman that we're used to. He went on that little heater during the fall swing. I'd say towards the end of last season, he was on a heater of all heaters, was hitting the overs on everything, right, on Prize Picks. But over the last 3 events, he's been a little bit shaky. So maybe keep an eye on that. GameCube says, are your Prize Picks from your video still looking good to go? Yeah, absolutely. So that came out about 3-4 hours ago. Those overs on birdies are better. Still love them. They still have speed at 69 strokes. So, yeah, luckily, not that many bumps with the video yet. So we'll be circling back on Prize Picks later. Hopefully, we don't see any bumps from the video by then, right? Or else we'll be able to go over those. And mostly, I want to take questions for the Prize Picks board, right? Because I did my video on it, already did my preview. I'm assuming a lot of you already saw that. I more want to take questions from you guys out there about the board. So we'll see. Are you going to review your DK contest from last week? Yeah, we can, because I know why you want to, Travis. We will. Remind me, okay? Absolutely remind you. Yeah, I figured it was 12.5. I'm still a little shaky on it. I wouldn't take his under at 12.5. I can tell you that much, right? After the bump, not worth taking the under anymore, at least in my opinion. But over, I don't know. I think it's more of a coin flip now. I think it's okay. Donovan says you have Rahm, McIlroy, and Max Homa for your top 3. Yeah, that makes sense. There's no arguments there. It makes sense. Now it says free hit'ems means you had a nice win at home. Gotcha. Yeah, sorry, I'm not used to all the lingo, so you had to be a little bit confused there. So you're saying you're playing with winning guys. Gotcha. No, absolutely. You're playing with house money at this point. I hit huge on Homa too, so my bankroll, at least for outright betting for this year, is pretty much handled. So I love that. James says, other than Davis Riley, who's viable under 7K, we'll have a few guys we'll go through. There's not a ton, James, but you're looking for guys that are stout drivers of the golf ball and that pop with the iron play. Because you're not going to find guys down there that are consistent off the tee and consistent on approach, or else it'd be 8, 9K golfers. They'd be studs, right? They'd be guys that are in the top 30 of the official world golf rankings. So try and find guys down there that are good off the tee. But yeah, we'll go through plenty of examples when we get there. Mark says, you backed Scheffler to win last year and genuinely thought he'd missed the cut after 2 rounds. Yeah, what happened to him? That was insane what he did here. I mean, the first time he played here, I think he finished in like 40th. No, he missed the cut the first time he played here. That's what I mean. Like, he didn't play very well, then finished in 7th. And he said last year was on that wild ride. Last year, he lost strokes on approach and won the golf tournament. So, yeah, I mean, he wasn't even playing his best last year and won. Imagine if he gained strokes on approach like he typically does. I mean, he would have walked away with it. JP says, liking Keegan, course history. Let's look at his course history. I actually don't know his course history, but I do like Keegan this week. We'll talk about it. There's a sneaky reason why. Pretty decent course history, right? Made the cutout last 5 years. So solid floor for Keegan. What I like about Keegs, and I was kind of hoping to keep this to myself, but a few people mentioned him on stream this week, mentioned him on my value picks video, that sort of thing. So I don't think he's going to be as low owned as I was hoping he would be. But he kills these greens. The stats wouldn't show it because he's been playing on tour for God knows how long, right? 10 plus years. And he's normally one of the worst putters on the PGA Tour. But if you take a look at his record on this hybrid surface, so it's Bermuda overseeded with either a bent or a POA, he's amazing. He gained over 5 strokes putting at the Valspar. I believe that was 2 years ago. Gained significantly with the greens last year at the Valspar. Has played well at a few of the other sporadic events in Florida, like the Players Championship. He's shown up, had some of his better putting weeks. I mean, even just last year was in contention at the Players Championship, which has the same exact kind of greens that you're getting this week. So, yeah, I mean, last week played extremely well, right? What did he end up finishing? I mean, it was like a top 10. Let's see. Second place last week. Not his last week, it's last start, right? Missed the cut, 34th. So he's had a lot of the changes to his lifestyle, to his body type, all that sort of stuff. seems to be translating just fine. So yeah, like I said, I kind of wanted to keep it kind of hush because he's not coming in very highly owned right now, JP. But I don't think he'll get that much steam. Like, I mean, if he's going to get steamed up, it might be like 1-2%. But hopefully that 1-2% is all of you guys in the stream here and not those slapdicks on the street. We don't want him to play him. Got a little rum and coke action going down here. I forgot about it completely, but yeah, we got that on the side. Now it's dry. I shouldn't say dry. Now it's warm. It's lukewarm. It's not really the best. But Corey says, how do you feel about Spawn? Looking at him as a pivot off of Poston. So if you take a look at Poston, the ownership is through the roof. I'm with you there on fading Poston. I like Poston. I'm a Poston truther. I've been playing him for longer than you guys can even imagine in DFS. But like you said, he's like 4 times as owned as everybody else. Hate to say it, Spawn is another one of those players that I didn't really want to talk up because I'm kind of hoping he stays super low owned. So Corey, yeah, I'll say this. Love the play. He's been playing well of late. He should be just as highly owned as anybody else in that range. And he's averagely owned at best. So yes, love the play. That's for sure. Oh boy. I see a question from Nick that's going to crack me up. Any weather concerns? Yeah, maybe some wind tomorrow, but it's hard to predict. If you take a look at my report from earlier on the stream abrasive, it's different on every site. Like one site has it really bad on Thursday. One has absolutely no wind. And then one of them has really high winds on Friday morning, and the rest of them have absolutely no wind Friday morning. So it's hard to tell. Tailed all of them from earlier. Sweet. So yeah, if you already tailed them all and you have no questions, I don't want to kick all of you out of here, but right, we're not going to cover that much differently. But yeah, we're going to go over a lot of the matchups when we go over the prize picks later, because I know a lot of you guys like matchups. I freaking hate them. I'll do my analysis on them, but you guys are crazy with those damn matchups on prize picks. That's all I'll say. I'm stalling. So God, you guys keep bringing up these players that I really don't want to talk about because I like them this week. But yeah, Scott Stallings is super cheap. He's $6,900, and he's played well at the Players Championship. He's played well at a few other of the Florida Swing events that you have the same kind of greens. And I don't think he's played here that often. Let me double check on his course history. I'm not the most familiar. He's $6,900. He's made 3 out of his last 4 cuts at the event. So yes, I'm playing Scott Stallings this week, and you guys got to start shutting up about these damn good value picks because we don't need them to be steamed up. But yes, I agree with all of you so far, right? I'm not going to agree with every value pick, but those 3 are absolute fire banger value picks. Nick says, sell you on Spieth. Oh boy. As you can guess, I'm playing Jordan Spieth this week. That shouldn't surprise anybody out there. But if you're going to play him here, I have a good reason for it. He's first off loves the course. The track record isn't anything crazy because like there are guys around him with better track records, right? So like don't look at this and think that this is the reason to play him. This 60th last year, I think a lot of people forget, he was in the top 5 going into Sunday. He completely imploded on Sunday, right? Went from the second to last group, I believe, to one of the worst that ended up making the cut. So don't look at that. You got to consider that he was still in contention last year, had a top 5 finish the year before that, but then a couple missed cuts. So you got to ask yourself, is this volatile course history worth exploring? And I think it is, right? He essentially had 2 top 5 finishes in a row. I'm going to excuse him for that Sunday blow up. That was really the first time he had been in contention for at least a year and a half. And this is really where Jordan Spieth got off to the front foot, right? Ended up being the player that he is today. Because for that solid 2-year stretch, he was a nobody, right? And then all of a sudden at this event, blew up there on Saturday. And it was, widely televised. Saturday is the most watched day of the Waste Management Phoenix Open. And Jordan Spieth was back, right? So the reason to play him is that for whatever reason, this is where he found that magic, right? This is what propelled him to that. So clearly likes the golf course and the ownership. And I'm not going to give away his ownership number because I know you're on the Patreon. You can look at it. Is ridiculously low. I mean, you're talking about no one wants to play Jordan Spieth. I mean, heck, even I had to double think it this week on whether I wanted to play Jordan Spieth. But yeah, if you give me sub 5% owned Jordan Spieth, yes, it's not even a thought. Can you talk web? So he likes the course he's won here before. So I know what you're looking at there, but even at like courses of late that have made sense for Webb, he just like hasn't done anything with it. So let's find good old Webb Simpson, right? Like missed cut last week, missed cut. I believe that was a Sony Open. He missed the cut. What was that event? That was the RSM Classic. He missed the cut, like another perfect Webb course. So the course history, of course, is elite, right? He has that top end to finish that win here, but that was when he was a completely different player. So I'm personally going to avoid him, but I've seen crazier things happen, right? We've seen guys like Jordan Spieth, right? He completely showed up here out of nowhere last year. So he could be that same guy. So I don't think you're crazy, but it's a little too much for me personally. David says, would you play Maverick this week with injury concerns? Nah, I'm not. I'm not going to bet him this week. Shit, you can only bet when you're drinking. I worry too much if you're not. There's a little bit of truth to that, but yeah, I don't place all my bets when I'm drinking. Luckily, I think a lot more clearly when I'm not. But in terms of sweating them out, especially like Friday, Saturday night, it's a little bit easier, right? You're a little bit less worried about it. But there's nothing like a cut sweat on a Friday night when it's like 4 p.m. You're not drinking yet. It's just the pure energy and nerves of you hoping you get your guys through the cut. There's nothing like that. And sometimes I wish I was drinking on a Friday night during the cut sweat, but it's too early for me. Right? I'm not drinking at like 4 p.m. on Fridays. There's limits to this thing. I'm young and all, but I try to be. I don't know. I act like I'm 40 at this point, at least when it comes to that bullshit. Bryson says you're seeing Keegan at 13%. Let me double check my sheet here. Yeah, he's not that highly owned. He's like right around. I thought he was like 10%. Let me see what he is on my sheet. I don't know if you're referring to mine or you're referring to somebody else's. Let's see. Good old Keegan. So Keegan's $7,700. Yeah, no, I have him significantly lower than that. I think. Yeah, I have him significantly lower than that. Not going to give you the exact number, but definitely not 13%. GameCube says, what's said in this chat stays in this chat. Yeah, right. Hopefully, at least. David says, Mav, Mitchell, Harmon are posted. Pick one for DraftKings. None of the above. I am not playing any of them. Taylor Montgomery, I do not like him this week. So yeah, you guys were started off hot with some of the value picks. I have to say, David, if I had to pick one of them, Mav, right? It would be Mav because of ownership. If you're talking about cash, if you're talking about a single entry, I would probably go Mitchell, David. But if you're talking about large field GPP, I mean, the right answer is none of the above, to be frank with you. I don't like the ownership on Harmon, Poston, Mitchell. Mitchell's like 15%. Poston's like 13, 14%. Harmon's like 10% owned, and he's been on a real cooler of late, has not been playing very well. And yeah, we just talked about Mav too, right? Like you could play him, but I just, if he's actually injured, that he stands no chance this week. And he sucked at this course to begin with. Michael says, Taylor Montgomery, I can't do it. Not when he's priced around guys that I think can legitimately win this event. Taylor Montgomery has been a loser on approach for 4 out of his last 5 events. The off the tee play has been pretty decent, but he's only gained like a stroke or 2 per event. And this is not really known to be a golf course where putting wins you the event. Like you've seen most of the winners aren't top end putters. In fact, let me look at the list. I don't think there's been one top end putter that's won this event. There hasn't. Over the last 8-9 years, none of them are elite putters, not a single player. So you want to play Taylor Montgomery at a course that rewards putting, and this is not it. So I'm going to steer clear. I've been wrong on him before, so just putting it out there. I think I have one of the worst reads humanly imaginable on Taylor Montgomery, but that's my read this week. Mitchell is going to do what Chalk Mitchell does and miss the cut. That's right. You've been here before, Corey. You know the deal. You're not one of those newbies out there that's going to play a 15% owned Keith Mitchell. Terrell Hatton. It's a good damn question. I don't personally have him this week. I prefer Shane Lowry down here, but the same reason I'm playing Shane Lowry is the reason you'd play Terrell Hatton, right? They're maybe not in form. We haven't seen them like at all over here on the PGA Tour. So that's why the ownership levels are as low as they are. But on the DP World Tour, as I know you are completely familiar with, it's not like they're playing like dog shit. They're just kind of been okay over their last few starts over there. So yeah, I mean, they're just top end talents that I'm sure you know you're very familiar with. are way more talented than a lot of their peers. I mean, just in terms of talent level, Shane Lowry should be at least like $8,900, like right around where Cam Young is. So he could argue he's underpriced, and he's like 7% owned. Like no one's playing Shane Lowry. So like I said, I kind of prefer Lowry here, but Terrell has the same argument. Low owned, same caliber of player. The course fit, I'll say, isn't ideal for either, but they're good enough players to get over that. Like, and that's the thing, like Taylor Montgomery's priced in between them, right? But like to me, Terrell Hatton and Shane Lowry are still significantly better players than Taylor Montgomery. Like he's had a good start to his season, but of late, Montgomery hasn't been invincible. He's starting to show that he's just like everybody else out here, right? 31st, sure, top 5, but like 12th, 15th, 57th, right? Like he's a good player. I think he's arguably an elite player already, but he's not head and shoulders better than major champions like a Shane Lowry or somebody that's won nearly 10 times internationally in a Terrell Hatton. I mean, Taylor Montgomery, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, has 0 tour wins. Right, that's and 0 wins on the Korn Ferry Tour. If I remember correctly, I don't think he won out there too. He actually, I don't want to say that because I feel like I'm wrong, so I'm going to look it up right now. But I'm almost positive that Taylor just had a bunch of top 5s and top 10s out there. So I'm going to double check on it. I'm going to make sure that I'm not just spewing bullshit. But that's the reason to take guys like a Hatton, take guys like a Shane Lowry for sure. So give me 1 second. I'm double checking my shit there because I want to double check whether Montgomery won. I don't think he did. So it certainly wouldn't bet him outright, but we'll see. Taylor Montgomery. He's never won before, ever, at any level. In his professional career, Taylor Montgomery has 0 wins. Like I said, in a field where you might need the guy to win from the 8K range, no thank you. Ryan says, highest DK score under $7,500. Well, if I knew that, I would be winning a lot of money this week. But if I had to take a few guesses on it, I like Pendrith a whole lot. You said $7,500. I like Hoagie. Yeah, man, that's a way too tough of a question, but I don't know. My value picks are great options for you there. That's a tough question, though. Robbie says Montgomery on a great start. Him, Burns, or Thigala. Burns or Thigala for me, just from the ball striking fit. I mean, I'm not trying to shit on Taylor Montgomery, but I gave you the reason why I'm not playing him there. Jaeger keeps popping for you, and he pops for good reason. He's, at least from my memory, pretty decent on these greens. That's fine. Good old Steven Jaeger. Yeah, he's decent on these greens. I know the approach play. I think that's what makes him pop. Let's see. Because, yeah, he was showing up in my models, too. At least, like, rank-wise, he's $6,600. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's kind of weird. He's losing on approach, and my model's really approach-heavy this week, so that's kind of surprising. Yeah, he's a decent play, man. He's a 6K golfer in elite-tier field. You're really just taking shots down there. David says, Ryder, Riley, or Vegas. That's Riley for me. I love Riley this week. So speaking of value plays, let's get through this top end of the 7K range and then get down to that lower tier range. So these 8K options, we kind of just talked about them via default. Still love Siwoo Kim. This top end of the 7K range, you have a few guys that are getting some attention. So Ricky and Jason Day are a lot higher owned than I thought they would be. Like, given their price tag, I thought that they would be like 4% owned because they're overpriced. In this field, they're like ridiculously overpriced, probably like $500, $600 too expensive. And somebody mentioned it before, the Ricky Fowler slapdicks are playing him in bunches. So he's like 10%, 12% owned. Jason Day at one point this week was like 15% owned in my modeling. And he's number 4 in my total model ranking. So he's been playing beautiful golf. But you can't tell me that a chalky Jason Day in a field this strong is a good idea. Like it's not. It's that simple too. The guy's crusty. He's old. He's way outdated at this point. And I know that the shots gained of late have been way better than we're used to. But we're not talking about an Amex kind of field. We're not talking about some half-assed Sony Open field, right? That kind of thing. You're talking about a major championship caliber field. And I have my doubts that he's ready for that. So these shots gained, they're beautiful. Like I said, 1.5 shots per round. But there's levels to this. And I think he's going to meet his match this week. A few other chalky players. Corey Connors. Boy, do I hate Corey Connors for DFS. He's like 15% owned. I was hoping he'd be like 5-6% owned. But people just have an infatuation with playing guys that post a ton of top 25s. So you look at Corey Connors' form, it's not even that impressive, right? It's a bunch of like top 18 finishes, but this is what Corey Connors does. And I've had this spiel 1,000 times, but I know there's a lot of new players to DFS this time of year. So I want to just reiterate it one more time. Corey Connors has had one top 5 finish his last 18 months on the PGA Tour. That guy will finish top 20 almost every single week. But for him to finish top 5 is like a once in a blue moon thing. So for him to have won as a Monday qualifier back at the Houston Open or Valero, I think it was the Valero Texas Open, like 5-6 years ago, was like him getting struck by lightning. He doesn't have those top end finishes. So he gets played in DFS over and over and over again because of his consistency, because he hardly ever loses strokes to the field. So anytime you look at his numbers, like shots gained and whatnot, they look like he's an absolute god, right? Because he doesn't miss many cuts. Well, you compare him to, let's see a good example here, like a Billy Horschel, for example, and he looks like a much better player. But Billy Horschel actually puts up that top end upside, right? He'll miss cuts, he'll eject from golf tournaments, but Billy Ho is capable of finishing in the top 25. In fact, has a win over the last year in 5 top 5 finishes, right? So and by the way, top 5 finish is kind of what you need to be in the optimal DFS lineup, right? So it's not a surprise that I'm using that as a metric, right, to try and identify some of these plays. So that's why the hell is Corey Connors twice as owned as Billy Horschel? Like, I don't care that the course fit makes sense. Corey Connors hits the ball straight as a nail. He can fit any golf course. And by the way, every single week, I hear touts go, Corey Connors is a great course fit. No shit. He's like the best tee to green player on tour. But you know what? He's also like the worst putter on the PGA Tour. So I hate to go on that rant there with Corey Connors, but like, come on. Like, he's like, let's sharpen up a little bit, boys. Like, it's not play Corey Connors every single week. When's the last time you were paid off by Corey Connors, like legitimately, and like won a contest? I'm not talking about min cashing. I'm not talking about, finishing in the top 50 of a GPP. When's the last time you actually won something on DFS using Corey Connors? Like, I don't think you can even remember when that was. So just keep that in mind. Those top end finishes matter. And there are certain players that just literally can't get there. And he's one of those players. A few low end players, Seamus Powers being completely overlooked. He's like 3 times lower owned than Corey Connors, which makes no sense. Even a Cage Lee's like half as owned. Tom Hoagie's going overlooked this week. Russell Henley's going overlooked this week. Chris Kirk's going overlooked. You have JJ Spawn going overlooked. Brendan Steele going overlooked. I mean, this whole range is just pure leverage to be had. Players that are good course fits, that have played well here, that are playing well, and everyone wants to play Poston. Everyone wants to play Keith Mitchell. Everyone wants to play guys like a Corey Connors up here and Alex Noren, even an Aaron Wise here at $7,600. It won't scattershot the rest of the range, and it's all plays that I think make perfect sense. So that's what I would recommend you do. Up top, I got a fuzzy in my mouth. I have cats, by the way, so sometimes their hair flies around. It's freaking nasty. Got that handled. But if you're going to play chalk up top, that's fine, right? Just make sure you're not taking it down here in the 7K range, because there's not that much that separates an Aaron Wise here from a Seamus Power. In fact, I'd argue that Seamus Power is the better player than an Aaron Wise, and he's like half the ownership level. So make sure you're being smart here in the 7K range. We talked about a lot of the pivots I like. Somebody I marked on here, somebody I really wanted to point out, is a Joel Damon, $7,100. And he's first off from Scottsdale. So there's something to that, right? The home game. The event history has been okay. I almost talked him up as a core pick, but the event history was kind of what kept me off of him. You can see he just hardly made the cut last year, missed the cut, withdrew, ended up missing the cut. So obviously sometimes the home games go the other direction. You get a little bit nervous in your hometown, so on and so forth. But he's a different player at this point. And that's why I'm willing to take the shot on him here he's won over the last 12 months. He's starting to gain even more prolifically off the tee, has gained some distance, and is now a lot more of a complete player, right? He's gaining both off the tee, on approach, and around the green. And sure, the putting isn't his best, but on this surface, even though he's a loser for his career, it's not that much lower than his baseline. So, he's $7,100. People loved playing Joel Damon last week. It was his first event back after a long extended period because he had a kid. maybe he was able to get some of that rust off. He can go out there, putt a little bit better than he did last week. And instead of starting 3 over par in day 1 and completely putting himself behind the 8 ball, maybe he can be a little bit more consistent, because from rounds 2 through 4 last week, he was just fine, right? If you take a look at the finish, you'd think that he probably was a lot better than he was last week. So if you take a look at what he ended up finishing, like 41st, he started like at 112th after day 1 last week. So for him to even be able to grind up to 41st was definitely a positive. And at 5% ownership, I'll be getting there. Kurt Kitayama, I talked him up in my value plays video. I just can't quit the guy, right? Got me into contention. I actually fired an outright bet on him there on Sunday, or I guess Monday morning. It ended up being at that point, and he let us down. So I'm going back there. He's been striping it of late. He loves these greens. Showed up at the Honda Classic, a few other of those Florida events where they have this same surface. So I'd like him there at 3.2%. Still like Davis Riley. I know I've had a few questions about him. A lot of that is due to the putting splits, but also just from the skill set standpoint, long enough off the tee, one of the better approach players in this range. I kind of talked about it before. Somebody asked who I was targeting under 7K, and it's the better drivers of the golf ball, right? So I'm looking for distance as almost a prerequisite, and then hoping a player can spike with the iron play. So Emiliano Grillo, for example, is a great total driver of the golf ball, both long and accurate off the tee. So he makes perfect sense there at like $6,700. Johnny Vegas, I know I had a few questions about him. Another relatively long player, and a little bonus here is he's pretty solid on the Bermuda overseed. So he's a great argument. I actually saw a little comment off the side of my eye. It says Martin Laird's sneaky good course history and sneaky good course fit too. So I'll show people what you're talking about. I saw this a little bit earlier, right? Top 15 finish, a couple made cuts, then a top 10 there 10 years ago. So yeah, you're completely spot on. He's cheap, $6,700. I don't love the putting splits, but Martin Laird is a dog shit putter to begin with. So is what it is. I'm not going to hold it against him too much. I tend to agree with you. Let's see. Nick says, Ricky and Day, is this 2011? Yeah, right around the 8K range too. Stop shitting on your boy T Monty. He'll be in his hometown this week. Hey, I hope he has a good week for you and whatnot, but I just don't see it. I really don't. He hasn't really done anything of late either when I faded him. So I'm not trying to shit on him. You know that, AC, and I know you're just kidding, but he's got to show it to me with the irons at some point. If I'm going to play him at one of these major like tests, it's just, that's the prerequisite. So he's got to show it to me, and he's got plenty of time too. I know he will. He might do it this week, right? Might just throw it back in my face. That'd be pretty funny too. If Day has a floral shirt, he's good for -8. If you get him in really windy conditions too, for whatever reason, he goes out there, shoots 6-7 under par. You agree in my Connors and Montgomery takes? Yeah, Connors, it's like not even like a argument at this point. The guy has one top 10 finish. Actually, it's top 5 finish, not top 10. He has a few top 10s. It's one top 5 finish the last 18 months. Like come on. What the heck? Braceface has got to be worth a little Ishway cash. We're not talking about Braceface other than Mark. I am playing him this week. I hate the guy. We call him Braceface for a reason, but he shouldn't be 7% owned. He shouldn't be the lowest owned player above 8K. I agree with you. I haven't bet him outright. I'm not that crazy, Mark, but yes, he's being overlooked. Mr. Gerg says Higo season. Boy, oh boy, I hope not. I'm not playing him this week, but that's the one guy who he's either going to finish top like 15, top 20, or finish last place. Like when he misses cuts, the guy shoots 7-8 over par. He's a freaking madman. So Gerg, I'm gonna let you have that exposure. Go for it all you want, bud. But gosh, he's an experience and a half. It's like Keegan Bradley, right? Can go from first round leader to missing the cut. It's like Jordan Spieth. He did that same thing a few weeks ago. Boy, he's crazy. Assuming we get to cash, but struggling with the 7,200 and below. Yeah, let's actually do cash right now. So we just finished the player poll. Let's hop over to the lineup side. So we'll do cash to begin. Then we're going to go through a few GPP lineups. Where are we at? There we are on Draftkings. So in terms of cash, right, you either take a Rory or John Rahm. If you want to save a little bit of salary, I guess you could start with like a Xander and use Patrick Cantlay as a second man in. If you do so, I mean, Cam Young probably makes sense as the third man in. So this puts you at $7,200. So you're saying you're struggling at this point. Let's see what we're working with here. So you can probably take somebody else in the middle of the 7K range. So Mitchell would make sense because he's chalky. Corey Connors, I love for cash. So let's actually go ahead and do that. Again, I'm not trying to shit on Corey Connors here. A great player, very consistent player, makes a lot of money, but not the best top end upside. But we don't need that over here in cash. So let's do that. So you're saying below 7,200. Yeah, it gets a little dicey, but look for guys that have a really high ball striking floor and good course history. So like Barton Laird, you could play in cash. He's the kind of guy I would take there because he's checking both of those boxes. Matthew Neesmith, good course history, sneaky course history, I'll even say. Another solid ball striking floor. If you want to go a little bit more expensive, maybe a little bit less aggressive, Hayden Buckley, right? He's relatively chalky, solid ball striking floor. Let's see, $6,900. You could even go up this high. And I actually don't love a lot of the guys at $6,900. So Buckley, probably the best option there. So that puts you at 7,100. Obviously, I can't give you an entire cash lineup. It's against the good old DraftKings rules and regulations. But these four players specifically, I think, make a lot of sense here. If you wanted to be a little bit more aggressive up top, maybe you really like Jon Rahm for cash, then you can't take a Cam Young, right? You have to be a little bit less aggressive there. So maybe your third man in is somebody like, let's see, we have Corey Connors in there. So that's even tough. There's not a bunch of guys in this 8K range to use. If we go to Cam Young, yeah, it's too much. It's tough. So that's all to say that you should probably start with like a Xander instead, just because you're going to have to be a little bit more aggressive in the 6K range if you take one of those top end options. But yeah, where's Cam Young? There he is. These four are probably how I'd start my cash lineup. It puts you at right around $7,000, a little bit lower than that, which is sub-ideal, but it's doable. You have a strong enough field to make it work. All right, let's go through the GPP lineup now. So let me get the comment off the screen. And if you have any questions for DFS, go ahead and fire them out there now, because afterwards we're going to be going into the prop side. So in terms of your GPP exposure, you guys know that I'm all about just taking ownership pivots, right? So because I'm trying to take these pivots to begin with, I don't have to think about my lineup construction nearly as much. So by starting with a Scotty Scheffler, who I love in lineups, maybe my second man in, going to like a Hideki Matsuyama, who's going to be a low-owned play, I could be a little bit chalkier with my other four spots. So if I want to take, somebody with good course history like a Sahith Theegala, I can go out there and do so. If I really wanted to play like a Keith Mitchell, I'd be okay with it in this kind of lineup because I have two pivot plays up top, right? Guys that are going to be significantly lower owned than their peers. So you don't have to worry about ownership nearly as much. Now, I'm not playing Keith Mitchell to begin with, right? So I'm not going to do so, but that's the idea, right? Maybe I take a Tom Hoge instead and rad out that kind of lineup. So by taking pivots, it really simplifies your lineup making process. I'm more just mixing and matching at that point. But let's go over what you would do if you do want to take some chalk, right? So let's say you want to start with Rory and you want to use, let's go with Cantlay as your second man in. So it's relatively aggressive up top. You're taking two of the highest owned players on the slate. Well, at this point, if you're in one of those large field contests, taking a chalky Cam Young is really going to be detrimental to your lineup. You're going to have 3 out of your 6 spots where you're cornering yourself to at least 20, probably 25% of the field. And you're differentiating in the 6K range, which you can do, right? I'm not that worried about your lineup being unique at that point, but I worry about your leverage up top, right? Like you're just going to have a hard time moving yourself up the leaderboard against so many, that's such a large percentage of the field. So I would recommend in the large field GPPs, right? If you take these two chalky players up top, is forcing yourself to one of these unique options in the 8K range. So whether that's like a Shane Lowry you could get to, I think will be low owned. I know somebody mentioned Terrell Hatton before, Nick Mars mentioned, or even going down to somebody, God forbid, right? Like a Billy Horschel, $7,800. That's going to get you back on track. So let's go ahead and put Billy Ho in there. Let's put Seamus Power, another low-owned pivot. At this point, because we have those two high-owned plays, but two guys that are going to be like sub 7% owned, I feel a lot better about this lineup. So it's all dependent on the sort of player pool that you're going with. If you're taking more of a pivot approach like I am, building lineups a little bit more straightforward, I would say. But if you're taking some of that chalk, just build smart, right? Think about your lineups. Think about total ownership, product ownership. When you're going out there and putting together these combinations, you should be good to go. Let's hop over to Prize Picks here in a second. Let's see if there's any questions before I do. Where are we at? who's on your card this week? So I bet the 4 core picks that I went with there. I did add a Hideki outright, and I'm considering at the very least adding a few more. Ricky Fowler, I have like a half unit bet on, but I'm not playing him in DFS. So I guess that's worth noting that I did take the top end upside of Ricky this week. It's more of just like an entertainment kind of bet for me. But yeah, I'm not counting on that one too much. So if you're looking to, my main exposure, it's the 4 core picks I went with. Tanner says Steele or Herbert. Steele, I'd say. Thank you for clearing up the Coco shit talk of top 20 locks. Exactly. Yeah. Montgomery, I am talking shit about. I'll say that. But like I said, I'm willing to be wrong there. But yeah, Coco, top 20 lock. Put him in every damn cash line. I lock him in cash. Who else? Aaron Rye's like that. I should have mentioned that Aaron Rye's in the field. So he's another one of these guys that every time he's in the field, I just play him in cash. Yeah, if you're looking for like a cheap guy in cash, go to Aaron Rye too. He's another one of those players that just his floor is so ridiculously high. It's just that his ceiling is non-existent. So yeah, no shit talking to my Canadian brethren. I actually like a lot of the Canadians this week. So Corey Connors, I wanted to play before the ownership came out, but I like Hughes. I like Nick Taylor. I like Taylor Pendrith a whole lot this week. And he had even a few of the like lower owned Canadians in the field I'm considering. So we'll have to see. We need to get more than 30 guys in your contest. Yeah, I agree. It's too small. I need to expand it for next week. Speaking of, if you're not already in the contest, I'm not sure how many spaces are even left at this point. The link is in the description of the video. When I last checked, there were like 22 people in there or something in the range. So there's not much space left. So if you're not in there, get in there. And yeah, Travis, we're going to go over the contest here in a second because I know why you want to look at it. Anybody know Rom's ownership? It's like 20%. And you're leaving $2,200 on the table to get different. You can do that too. So I should have mentioned that during this section of the video. If you really want to get different, right, and you just want to play a bunch of the chalk, right, like maybe it's a Rory and Cantlay, like I was talking about before, maybe even a Cam Young, then yeah, leave salary on the table. The issue is with that is this 6K range, which is typically what you have to go down into to make that kind of lineup, sucks, right? Like there's no one in this like $6,200 range that I want to play. Like it's just a bunch of scrubs that are most likely going to miss the cut, probably have like top 20 upside at the very most. So it's doable. It's a good way to differentiate yourself and get unique. But the one thing I'll say, man, is I used to be a lot bigger on leaving salary on the table. You don't necessarily have to worry about being unique so much. Like there's going to be maybe like 10, 15 different combinations that are duplicated like 20 plus times on a slate. But outside of those exact combinations, there's nothing that's duplicated all that much, right? Like you might duplicate yourself with like one other person or maybe 2 other people, God forbid, in the super large field GPP. I don't know how much you should be worrying about that though. So ideally, right, you want all unique lineups, but I don't know. In PGA DFS, it's like the one sport where it doesn't happen all that often. Sam Burns versus Montgomery head-to-head for the entire tournament. Ooh. I love Burns this week, but he's a little bit inconsistent is probably the nice way to put it, right? Because Sam Burns, he's usually either in contention or ejecting. That's tough, man, because Montgomery has been so consistent on tour. Like, I was talking shit about him maybe as like the course fit here, but look at this, right? Like he makes every cut. Like his worst finish was a 57th at the Houston Open, but he still made the cut that week. Let's look at Burns, right? 11th, great, 32nd, 12th, but withdraw, right? Has a few missed cuts before that. Damn, I'm going to side with Burns, but that's close. That's closer than I'm really comfortable with, to be honest with you. Todd says you're leaving 5K on the table. That is aggressive. You have more stones than me, but hey, you're definitely going to be unique. I'll tell you that much. Jack says you've got a sneaky feeling about Hadwin this week. It seems to be a bit of a desert fox. Yeah, good course history, has played well at a few other of the events out this way. And also, Jack, I'll point your attention to the putting splits. Let me find the exact metrics on him. So he gains half a stroke per round on the surface, which is 0.2 strokes better than his baseline. But 2 of his wins are at the Valspar Championship, which I think they might be the only wins that he has on his record are like at the Valspar Championship. And they happen to have the same exact green type as what you have this week. So, Jack, you're definitely on to something there. All right, let's go over to Prize Picks now. This is going to be relatively quick just because I did the whole video today, right? Went over a lot of my props already. And at least I don't think any of them have been bumped yet. They haven't, the ones I gave on the video. So if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and put them down in chat right now. But essentially all I'm going to do here is put like some of the props I've taken on the card here and talk through them again. So it's not over, it's under, and it's this. So these are the 4 I put in my video earlier. They all still stand. It's going to be a little bit windy, like we talked about off the hop, but this wind finder, right, they have it between like 20 to 30 mile an hour wind gusts in the morning. All the other sites completely disagree. Like you can see over here, they have the winds at like 4 or 5 miles an hour. Windy app has them between 3 to 5 miles an hour for much of the morning. The maximum of like 12, 14 miles an hour of wind gusts. So you get to ask yourself what meteorologist you believe, which is such a shitty situation to be in. But these are top end players. I'm going to take a chance on their birdie or better props because over the years, the average has been right around 3.8 birdies. But for these elite tier players, they're consistently making like 5, 6 birdies around this track, particularly over the first 2 rounds where conditions tend to be their easiest. So these elite tier guys, I would include Rahm there, Xander Schauffele I have, Colin Morikawa I took the over on too. Bunch of overs here. Now, the unfortunate part is, and I guess the part we should really focus on is the payout structure, right? So because we're taking props of all the same direction, you're going to get the lower payout, right? As opposed to 10x, you're only getting 7x here. So if you have a 4-leg, use the flex. The 5.5x is actually higher than what you get for your normal payout. So it's kind of wild how they do that, right? They pay you less for the power play, but they're going to give you more over there for the flex, or just do 2-leg powers. That's what I would mostly tell you guys to do because you're getting the full payout there. You can just mix and match, do an entire portfolio. And that's essentially the idea. To give you an average for greens regulation, the GIR average last year was 72.6%, which equates to right around 13 greens hit per round. It's worth noting that that was significantly higher than what they're used to around this course because the average historically around Scottsdale was only 12 greens in regulation. So perhaps we see a little bit of regression to the mean in that category this year, but that's not a guarantee. I'll say that much. In terms of your fairway percentage, it's 59.7%, which equates to right around 8.3 fairways per round, which is actually spot on the historical average around this golf course. So when we take a look at greens and regulation, right, a lot of the guys are priced above the average for the field. I had Matty Fitz under, but that was at 13.5 greens, and now he's at 12.5. So, they bumped him an entire green there. So that kind of sucks. But there are a few unders you could take here too. Like Jordan Spieth's at 13.5. I would still take the under there. I mean, I love Jordan. I love him around this course, but he is relatively inconsistent. But they did bump a lot of the best choices. So, right, like Brian Harmon, I talked about him earlier. I know we had a question about him, but he was at 13 greens that had his under. Like I said, they moved a lot of the good ones down. Somebody I'd take an over on would be Keegan Bradley. Like, he's one of the best iron players on tour. We know this. Like, that's like the one thing we can count on Keegan Bradley to do. And he's priced at the bottom of the board. Like, what's that all about? So if you want to mix that in as a prop, you can do that there. But not all that much has changed since the video from earlier. Go over to fairways hit. The average was 8.3, like we just went over. So there's a lot of unders here I liked. Billy Horschel was at 9.5 fairways there just yesterday. So another one that was bumped down by bump picks. A few of the guys at 9.5, like Kisner, you could consider for an under, right? There's a whole 1.2 fairway difference between where some of these guys are in the average. But the guys I really preferred were, of course, Horschel. You got bumped down on entire fairway. But also Scotty Scheffler and Patrick Cantlay, they were at 9 fairways. So it's annoying that they, can't stand behind their props. They decide to bump a lot of the ones that they do. But once again, some of the more inaccurate drivers on tour you could take for unders here, whether that's like a Ricky Fowler, the Jordan Spieth you could fade here. I mean, and that's probably about it, right? Like, I think the rest of the projections are pretty close to where they should be. Birdie or better matchups. If there's any questions on birdie or better matchups, we'll go through them, but you guys know I don't love it. This whole 16, 17, 18 prop, I really do like. If you take a look at a lot of the studs over the years, they've killed these holes, especially the longer players on tour. Like, I know Jon Rahm over his last 8 rounds is like gone under 7 of the 8 rounds. I know Justin Thomas has gone under like, I think 4 of his last 6 rounds around here. Actually, sorry, I think it's like 6 of his last 8 rounds around TPC Scottsdale. He's gone under on this prop. So the winds, that's like the one thing that I keep going back to, right? Is this wind finder forecast. Willy weather, no issue. Windy app, no issue from the weather side. it's so annoying that Windfinder is calling for this tomorrow morning. So I hope they're wrong. Obviously, if they are, this whole 16, 17, 18 prop probably smashes tomorrow, and it's probably the last time we see it. They probably don't even post it for the last 3 rounds. So I'm going to jump on it early. Hope that maybe Windfinder's just wrong over there, because if they are, this is an absolute gold mine. Let's go ahead and catch up on chat, see what's going on down there. Keegan is wearing a visor this week. Adjust accordingly. Why the heck is he going back to that? God, it's such a bad look. Keith Mitchell can work the visor, but God, Keegan Bradley just looks like he's trying too hard. Bing says, what about underdog? They bumped up. Yeah, I'm not betting anything after the bumps over there. I mean, I'll look at the board right now, but all the ones that I took are the ones I'm really sticking with. I got in a 4-man card on underdog a few days ago. Let's see it. Maybe they bumped things in our favor, right? Always worth taking a second gander at it. So we'll do so for you there, Bing. By the way, if you have any questions, we're about to wrap up the stream. So get them in now and I'll get them answered for you. So over there in underdog, the board is a little bit more positive towards players than the ones you have on Prize Picks. So what I mean by that is like birdies are better, like 0.5 higher. So like Justin Thomas is at 5 birdies. Guys like John Rahm, a Scotty Scheffler, for example, are like 0.5 birdies higher than their counterparts. Even Rory McIlroy is like 5.5 birdies. So if you were going to take anything, probably fading some of the numbers that are off by like an entire birdie, right? So to give you an example there, I know I think Rahm was at 5.5 birdies at one point. Like that would have been a prime, fade candidate, right? Because he's an entire birdie off of where they had on Prize Picks. But they unfortunately moved that. So I wouldn't force that in. Yeah, a lot of the boards at 5 birdies. So like I'm taking a lot of overs on Prize Picks at 4.5, but like I'm not confident in them to get to 6 to 7 birdies, right? Like the reason we're taking over 4.5 is we think they can maybe get 5 or 6 birdies. So yeah, I mean, it looks like under central over there, at least for birdies are better. Trying to find you a few good examples, but they're all kind of where I would expect them to be, at least for that site, right? They've got like that 0.5 birdie bias over what they have on Prize Picks. Yeah, I don't know, man. I hate that. By the way, I had a conversation with the lines maker last night over there in Underdog. I guess I'll just pause to say that. Let me take a sip here. I like asked the lines maker last night. I was like, "What's up, man?" I was like, "You guys bumped my stuff within a minute." At first, and I actually. It's crazy. I can just share my screen and show you because it was on a public server, right? So it's not like I'm showing private messages. So let's just do that. 1 second. All right, let me share my screen. Alrighty, so check this out, right? So last night, I was like, any reason that the props I took on Underdog all got taken off the board. He said they're all up. Sorry about that, right? But they posted them after being bumped. He bumped every single prop up, right? And then goes, oh, they're back up. Sorry about that, right? Like nothing happened, like trying to just like blow it off. Like first off, like you're slick, you think you're funny there, right? But here's the explanation he started giving, right? So like other people started chiming in, talking about the bumps, which they were from my server, right? So I was kind of talking about it. And he goes, there could be a number of different reasons for a bump: weather, tee times, waves, course, or volume. And I was like, and he was trying to like get on my good side by asking questions. So people kept bitching at him and stuff. And I went at him and I was like, dude, like there's zero chance that you're bumping lines based on, weather, so on and so forth. Right. I was like, that's just not happening. So I called him out on that. And then he finally came out and said, he's like, if you have a large following, that's probably triggering the check. So they do not care at all, right? They're just bumping lines based on action. And I can tell you, like my Patreon's like gone a lot bigger. Like I have like, more than 300 people that are tailing the lines I put out. That shouldn't be enough action to warrant instantly bumping. Like they have a maximum of $200 that you can put on props. So you're telling me that like $3,000-$4,000 of action is enough for you to like warrant going out there and bumping like that? To me, that's just, it's way overboard. I'm surprised that they would even admit that they do so. And they're arguably just as scummy as Prize Picks now. So yeah, not a big fan of them over there. But yeah, if you're going to take anything, Bing, it's some of those unders. But there's nothing that I would take at this point that I'd like recommend you betting, right? Like that I see a massive edge on. But yeah, it's a good way to hedge your bets over there on Prize Picks would be to take some of the unders on the guys at 5 birdies. That's how I'd handle it. What's going on, Breakfast Ball? Did you talk about Kirk yet? I didn't. I kind of don't want to talk about him because I really like him this week, Hermit, and I want to make sure that he stays relatively low owned. But yeah, I like him. I'll say that, right? There's a couple people left here. We don't have the full squad in here right now, so that's okay. We can give away some of the secrets. One thing I'll say, guys, if you haven't already smashed that like button, go ahead and do so. It helps me out with growing the channel. And we're about to finish up here. So if you have any questions, go ahead and fire them away right now so I can get them answered for you. Just join the Patreon. Nice, man. Love to have you as a part of the crew. We'll get you in the Discord if you haven't already as well. Send me a PM on there. Alex says your fantasy team is Scheffler, Thomas. Love that. Matsuyama, Montgomery, Power, and Pendrith. I like all those 6 players. I'm not a huge Montgomery guy, but like I said, I'm wrong, right? I'm not perfect by any means. So yeah, I like it, man. I think that you have a relatively balanced lineup there. That might be on FanDuel because like ownership wise, I have a hard time thinking you can play all 6 of those in the same lineup. But yeah, if that's a FanDuel lineup, I like it, man. J-Jack says, who are your top 3 favorites for the last 3 holes? Good question. So I like Rory here, but all of these guys that are long players off the tee. So like it could be, let me just put a sets of players I would take. Like these 5 players would probably be my top 5. Take Spieth off there. That's probably my top 4. Take JT off there. That's probably my top 3. So yeah, those ones. They're just the longer players on tour. 16's a par 3, 18's a par 4, but 17 is a drivable par 4. So the reason I'm looking at some of the bombers is that you can take advantage of that drivable hole. And yeah, that's all I've got, boys. So gonna hop on out of here. That's all I've got for this live stream. I appreciate everybody that stopped on by, showed all the support that you guys do. We're going to be doing live streams for rounds 2 through 4 of this event, going over showdown, going over prize picks. So stay tuned to that. I'll be putting out the ETA on that over there on my Twitter. So if you're not following me on Twitter, make sure you do that too. First off, post some pretty funny content over there, especially talking shit to some of the lines makers around the industry. And it's a good way to stay on top of when I'm going live and that sort of thing. So do that. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already too, so you don't miss any of that content in the future. But best of luck with those lineups. Best of luck with any props that you guys are entering. And let's crush it, right? Last week was another profitable one. We got off to, honestly, to probably the best start I could have imagined here in 2023. And while we're not going to win prolifically every single week that we're out here, it's good that we have so far, right? Like let's ride the heater. It's going to come to an end at some point, I can tell you that. But I don't plan on it happening this week. So let's extend it, right? Let's ride that heater for just, as long as we can at this point. Best of luck out there, and I'll catch you guys next time.